Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to another episode of the PDX Black Rose Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Christian, and we have another episode for you with AJ McCreary, who is one of the founding team and also the executive director of the Equitable Giving Circle. And so we go back a little bit, back when we were doing the Thai entrepreneurship program out here in Portland, Oregon, and we really connected, been following her story, and she's been doing a lot of great things. And so excited to share a little bit of what she's doing with you all, especially based off of what has happened during the pandemic. And hopefully you can support her, support the work that she's involved with, and really just tap in with the Portland culture, especially for Black and brown folks that are making waves in this space. And so without further ado, let's get to know AJ McCreary. I wanted to take a break from the episode to let you know that we have some merch that is available. Over at Iltopia Studios, you can find the Black Superheroes Matter art book, which is a collection of illustrations that reimagine your favorite superheroes through the eyes of children of color. We also have a bunch of sticker packs, over 120 different sticker designs of your favorite superheroes. More importantly, we have our Color Me Super coloring book series. Definitely check out the merch at shop.iltopia.com or blacksuperheroesmatter.com. And now back to the episode. Welcome to another episode of the PDX Black Rose Podcast. And today we have AJ McCreary. We go back to the Thai days, what was that, like 20, what was it, was it 2018 or 2019?
I can't even remember. It feels like 100 years ago.
Yeah, it was like another lifetime ago, right?
It was a whole different world.
Back when cohorts were in person.
Yeah, things were in person, when you didn't wear, you could see everyone's face all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, when air wasn't scary.
Yeah, when air wasn't scary, right? Where the biggest thing we had to worry about was like, dang, how am I going to park in downtown? Right. Yeah, but you've been moving, taking strides with a lot of different things right now, especially things that you weren't necessarily doing as much during pre-pandemic, and so how's things how's things been with you?
Yeah, things took like a total 180 or 360 or I don't know, a whole bunch of turns, big turns. The beginning of the pandemic, I'd been doing a bunch of cannabis work and art stuff and marketing and development being really picky about the marketing and development that I had been working on. And then myself and a group of women and femmes kind of pre-pandemic had been holding space and having conversations about the idea of creating a giving circle. And we were really loosely talking about rolling out some programming for fall of 2020. And then the pandemic hit. And I had just been at the Black Growers Gathering, really inspired by the farmers that I met there. And really it connected with me a lot. Growing up in Portland, and farm to table is not a new concept here. Access to being around farms or farmers, just because our close proximity to, Sobeys Island, Hillsborough, Troutdale, and Hood River. So not being in farm community, but seeing it, and also really resonating with the work of Booker T. Whatley, who is the Black man who studied and worked at Tuskegee University, who coined the idea of the CSA, which is community supported agriculture. And it's really just the idea of having, essentially city folks come help on the farm for a day or two, and then they get produce. And so it was a way to tap into those resources of folks who had some, farm experience or agriculture experience, or who are interested in having farm or agricultural knowledge and experience. So inspired by all that, I was like, hey, y'all, let's buy some CSA from Black and brown farmers. It'll be cool. We'll help 50 families. We'll help a handful of farmers. In a week after launching that idea, we'd raised $30,000. which covered our need for the 50 families for the summer. And so being the person that I am, I was like, we'll just double down. We'll help 100 families.
Let's just scale this.
And they were like, well, not really how it works. And I was like, why not? Like, there's farms everywhere. This will be fine. So then it kind of just, in a really positive way, imploded into us serving 350 families.
Wow.
And
how much of a different time? Because like how much time from like 50 families to like 350 families? Because that's a big jump, right?
Yeah, that was like 6 weeks at most, if that.
Dang, that.
And it's like all feels like a blur. Yeah. So that first like June when we got started with like delivery and all of the things and all of the details, it was pretty wonky, like not gonna lie, because like this idea, this work started, we really started kind of loosely in December. This idea around the CSA, right, in February, we started kind of not late February, early March. By April, we were in it doing the thing, moving, like fundraising, and CSAs, because we were working with smaller farms in the beginning, didn't really get started until June. So we had a little bit of wiggle room. But that first June was really rough. It was just like all of the things that could be going wrong were going wrong. It was crazy. By July, we were rolling. We were good. We were serving at that point about 350 families with regular food support. So getting the CSAs from the farms and getting those delivered to the families. And the home delivery was really important to us as a whole group because, one, we want our community, we serve Black and brown folks. We want our community not to have to be worrying about public transportation, having to worry about lugging, a 50 to 20 box of food across town. And we serve a lot of vulnerable folks. So, elderly folks, folks with disability, folks who have, single parents with, small children, and people that work, right? So if you have a working, not necessarily a 9-to-5 job, but if you're doing a service industry job or you're working, in a job that is not respected and pays terrible, you probably also have wacky hours. And so then having to like access food service, complicates things. So trying to like mitigate those things. And our entire leadership team, we all kind of think from a mindset of having to tap into these kinds of services because we've all needed help in a different one way or another. Mm-hmm. So we try to really think through that, like what would we need when we were needing these kinds of services? Like what would be the best thing for us and to be mindful of that, right? So by July, we were serving 350 folks, regular service, and our program. So at that time, it was just the weekly food box, and we serve the same families every single week. So it's the food box, and then also a once a month protein. So, and we're really, really respectful. If you are a halal family, you're getting halal meats. If you are vegan, you're getting vegan items. If you're a no pork household, you don't get pork products. Trying to be really, really mindful of that for folks because a lot of food services are not. And as a person who doesn't eat pork, I'm super agitated to like even know pork stuff is near my food. So like I really am mindful of that. And our whole team is really hold space for that. And what's happened since then now, the families, and we've, fluctuated up to at the height during like the fall time. And then through December, we were serving at the height 525 families. And we've had a pretty good graduation rate. So we've seen a lot of families actually be able to take the money that they are saving on, food service and be able to do really great things for them as a household. So now our program includes the meat and the weekly food boxes, but it also includes the weekly pantry items. So, we're sending out oatmeal, pasta, rice, dried beans. Dee Hopkins, our CSA director, is really, really great about getting coffee and beautiful teas and spices and all of the things that make cooking fun. Because a lot of times if you're needing to access food service, you don't get,
You kind of have to
the gourmet
compromise.
things or fun things or the special stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of how
Nice.
we got rolling, and it's been a really fast ride. Like it's been really fast.
Well, yeah. I mean, you go from you go from saying, "Oh yeah, we'll do 50 in what June," and then literally a season later, 2 seasons later, you're talking about services for 500 families a week, right? Like that is growth, right? Like that is exponential growth right there, right? In
Yeah.
a market that is or in an industry that doesn't necessarily see that type of growth, right? Like it's definitely like it's it's different, right? Like
I just don't even. It is different, and I don't see it as really like that different. And I don't feel like anyone on the leadership team really feels or thinks that it's different. Like when we have these conversations, I think we think both in a really large scale and a large way. And I would say the way all of our brains have been trained and have operated in real time, it's around big math, right?
yeah,
Lillian Green, who is one of our outreach directors, she has been done policy work. She's, managed multi-million dollar budgets. She really understands big math. I've done a lot of development stuff on, multi-million dollar projects, building stuff. And so I'm used to big math. Divisha Gordon, she does a lot of stuff with the city and housing, right? And so like she is experiencing and around big math. And I think that really impacts the way that we're able to organize in real time at the ground level, because we have so many people, Keen Tolton Davis. She works with Albina Vision Trust. She's done stuff in Mayo House. She does a bunch of stuff all over the place.
yeah.
Right. So like our board too, we're tapping into people who really on a regular basis interface with big math, but we're also really rooted into our community and we're really invested in serving our community in real time. And I think that combination where we're able to intersect as a group, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful because I'm sort of seeing that happen in sort of like the art and the tech sector right now where I work with a lot of nonprofits in education. I do stuff with PPS and Hillsborough School District and Portland Public Schools or Portland Community College and all that. And so now I'm sort of seeing the benefits of, well, albeit because of COVID, right? Like we're talking about like post COVID, during COVID times, seeing how, you know, I go outside, I talk to people that are sort of dealing with the things that are affecting us in COVID. And I'm saying, okay, how can we help kids like learn better? How can we help kids, pick up these skills? How can we sort of mitigate the factors that are disproportionately affecting our community? And then, because I have the experience and, I feel confident that I can sort of tackle these problems and do it at the liberty and do my people justice. And but like there's that element of like, like we live in like we're tapped in with the community. We know what they're looking for. We know what they need. And we have access points that we have the privilege of access points that allows us to navigate this space and open doors for other people. And it's like it's very nuanced. It's really, really nuanced to where like you can't, like there's parallels, but like it's it's just so many nuances, right? Like you wake up and you don't really know what's going to happen every day, but you have an idea of what you can expect because you lived through
Yeah.
these things, for years, for decades,
Yeah.
right? And I think that really like, it sort of comes to fruition where it's like, the experience and the comfortability and the connection that you made in the community meets the sort of the opportunities that sort of fall in your lap or the opportunities or pathways that you want to pursue. And then at some point they sort of intersect, and then you have an impact. And then it's just a matter of
Yeah.
how do you continue that impact, right?
So one of my favorite community elders, and I have so many favorite community elders, so I shouldn't say that, but one of my favorite humans to talk to, Miss Bernie, a couple years ago, pre-COVID, on that exact topic of like that intersection of us understanding both the systems and this larger picture and narrative and this larger culture, because we've went to college, we've been in corporate settings, we've been in a lot of white spaces that like Miss Bernie, who's in her 70s, wasn't originally, which at our age, I mean, she's done amazing things. She's literally done everything from been a arguing or a curator for the arts within Kaiser to flying airplanes, driving school children, and like everything in between. So like such an incredible story in life that she's had. But we were having this conversation. I was having a bad day, and she really pointed out like that we are cultural translators, like because we've been in those spaces at college, trained up in a way, but we're also really rooted in our community and grounded in community in a way that not everybody is.
Yeah.
That we are a type of cultural translator, and that is one of the reasons why that like she predicted a lot of what we're doing now before it happened. Not around COVID, but she was like, no, y'all understand things and y'all been trained in a way that, we dreamed of being trained in. We dreamed of being able to have access points. And now we have technology on top of it. So we get to create our own access points. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, it's so cool to see that like in real time, how it's manifested and how it's playing out. And then getting to witness that with other, community members, peers, friends, just folks that I see in the world that are like also able to have like that, similar juxtaposition. Because it's as shitty as things are right now. And I look outside and I'm just like, ooh, I don't know about outside. And I just want to go back inside. We're at this incredible pivot, right? Like so many incredible things are happening.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated how the momentum will continue.
Yeah. I mean, it's a paradigm shift, and it's a paradigm shift, not particularly in an industry, but just like across the board, like culturally. And
yeah,
I wouldn't say culturally. I would say just society is seeing a paradigm shift, because if we say like
it's
culturally, there's a like, because if we say that like culturally, like there's a paradigm shift, you technically it's sort of, I mean, it isn't like it's because like, we still listen to the same music, sort of the trends that we're seeing are still sort of, they're going along the same path that we predicted, right? TikTok randomly arises, and then Black culture sort of gets appropriated. And then, the paradigm shift is in society, Black people with their culture, they have the opportunity to police their culture in a way that's unique. And you get to see that play out in real time. And so not so much a cultural paradigm shift, but really just a paradigm shift within society and how the structures are sort of laid out, and who has access to those structures, and who has control over those structures. We're starting to see that become more democratized. And I'm all for that, like I am all for that, because, it's something that like you wanted to see growing up, and sort of that learned helplessness that you sort of like feel when you're like, oh yeah, like why don't we see these things like on big screens? Why don't we see these things in school? Why don't we see these things, right? Like we're actually seeing that people have agency to actually make those a reality now. And if somebody tells them no, then they'll just do it on YouTube, or they'll do it wherever they want. And so it's a fun time to be alive.
We have the opportunity to build our own audiences now too.
Yeah, and
like it'll really
in a sustainable way, right? Like, because at first it was like you sort of have to build an audience to the point where you can sort of get more opportunities. You got to pitch it and you got to do all that. But now, like you just need to know where to, what keywords to look up and where to point and click. right? Like it's more about just like, if you have the information, then there's tools available for you to uh, utilize that information to scale. And I think that's really like a interesting point that like I think you guys have played out very well. Where like you guys you guys kind of had the foundation or the seeds of a foundation to to put something into plan and then actually see it grow.
Yeah, I don't mean, so we're definitely team building the ship while we're flying it. We definitely are. I do not want to pretend that is not what is happening. I will say our team, our understanding of both systems and our we are a team of like, let's get shit done.
Yeah.
That's all of our vibe. Like, there's a will, there's way. I think we've heard no so many times, and I think we're all fed up with that, which really fueled problem solving. And just, we are people as a group that were very much raised by community in different ways. And I think that really fuels the energy to make things happen.
Yeah.
And I think we're all, some of us on our team have kids, some of us don't. And we're all very invested in the future, whether it's through us having kids or being teachers or being aunties or what have you, but very invested in a different experience. And as an individual that, has been on food stamps, has been like broke, trials and tribulations of poverty, I used to be real, just like, I'm cool. Like, I'm not going to a pantry. I'll figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
I cleaned houses because I was like, nah, I'm not going to go. It is less embarrassing to clean houses and to scrub someone's toilet than to go to a food pantry. And people I was like, you're going to be treated like you're an idiot and you're the devil because you're hungry or you want your kid not to be hungry. I would rather go clean someone's toilet, get my little $50, $60. Then I learned that cleaning people's toilets actually is pretty lucrative and not the worst idea if you are broke. Turn my life around with that. For real. But like, we really, like, for me, that has been very mindful of like, if you are needing services, we have to do it in a way that you don't feel less than, and that it is like that you're getting services based off of it. We care, right?
Yeah.
So we get up and do this work because we genuinely care about our community. We get really excited about how we get to show up. I was just at the workspace this morning and Dee Dee got in some microgreens, some beautiful microgreens, and some like different kinds of microgreens, which I didn't realize that microgreens had such a variety. Like, there's some with purple stems and like, and it was just like a buzz of excitement of like, this is something different and that our families are going to get just because, right? Yeah. And I think also this morning kombucha came in. So like,
oh, easy.
Yeah, but it's fun, it's really fun to share things with folks, especially like food that's like would either be, oftentimes out of our budget or just special or something interesting to try, right? Like, I know personally, I'm not as inclined to try something that is expensive if I have never had it, right? Like, I'm not going to, probably just going to go with what I know that I already like and is going to be a hit in my household. So it's, it is genuinely fun to share, and like, we get really excited about getting good stuff for the folks that we serve. It's pretty much the best part of my job.
Yeah, I think it's liberating, right? Because because every action, when you get to a point where you're sort of pinching pennies together and you're sort of trading your time for money, then the value of things take on a whole new concept in your life, right? Like that $60 box of freaking, top tier noodles or whatever, if that doesn't hit, you're gonna feel it, right? Like that, if you're working for $10 an hour, it's like, like that better be worth 6 hours of work, 7, 8 hours of work after taxes, right? Like there's an actual like physical consequence to the things that the things that you sort of invest in as experiences, whether they're for nutritional value or anything like that. And so providing an opportunity to have people have these experiences without the physical toll that it takes to get them is something that at least for me, I'm growing to like appreciate now, right? I play football, I already have hip surgeries, and my shoulder hurts every time I wake up. Like it's
Yeah.
these things have physical consequences, and even to get to this point of comfortability. And so I think it's just really good to see that there's people providing opportunities to lower that bar of entry just for people to just live with a sense of agency. And
Yeah.
and that I think that that's something that, like, my parents' generation and like our generation, we start to see a shift, but like we're really starting to see that, like, quality of life doesn't have to come at the expense of like your life, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, and like we deserve the best. Like this was we had a donor, like an in-kind donation of food donor that wanted to give us expired things, and they were like, well, it's fine, da 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 da. And I think multiple people on the team have been like, we done told this woman we good. Like this, that's not our vibe. It's not like, we understand that expired goods are still good past the expiration date.
yeah,
There's all foolery with the USDA and policy and blah 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 blah.
yeah,
It's all about, but it feels different for something to show up and be, a day or two
yeah,
or a week expired. Like it's leftovers. It feels different, and it was really interesting. Like she could not grasp it until I said, well, how would you feel if I invited you over to dinner and after I served you dinner, I'll let you know that I have pulled that out of like a garbage can? And she was like, excuse me? And I was like, well, it's kind of like the expired. I mean, it's not the same, but it was
but
like the thing that
it
made
is
her think
though.
like, oh, not saying that there's anything wrong. Like if that is your only option to
Yeah,
sustain to dumpster vibe, I'm not knocking that. But I do know culturally we not really excited about that. You
yeah.
be like, you did what with this? Where'd
Well,
this come
I think it's a it feeds into the idea of being lesser than already,
from? Mm-hmm.
right? Where, like, if you had this service and it's supposed to really make you give you this experience, and it makes you feel like you should feel, like feel worthy of something. And then you look at the expiration date and you see that number, that has a very real consequence to it,
Yeah.
right? It has a very real consequence, and that can be antithetical to the mission, to the point where, like, you taking that and then giving it to three people completely obliterates all the work that you did up until that point.
Yeah.
Because you got to build trust. You have to like it's really damaging.
Well,
And
I also want to train, like, I don't want, like, not train in a negative way, but expose and help relearn and reconnect that we deserve the best,
yeah.
right? For generations, Black and Brown people have been getting the short end of every stick, been oppressed on purpose, starved of resources, overlooked and abused, and a whole bunch of other things that happened.
Hmm.
And so we have been conditioned to be, okay with second best or leftovers, or this will work because it's something. Um, I'm not saying like, and I love to vintage shop, and I love, like, I
Oh
have a
yeah.
whole day planning on going yard sailing on Saturday. Like that's a thing. But as I've gotten older and in different experiences, I've got to experience like luxury or being well taken care of or having access points. These are experiences our community deserves every single day at every single intersection, right? Like
Yeah.
can't just be some people get access to nice stuff and other people who do not. And like, so really helping our community learn and experience that. And also getting to interface with white folks and retraining them, because there's a lot of white folks who haven't experienced any level of poverty or any level of oppression or any level of really discomfort.
Yeah.
They really haven't put any thought into how would you feel getting literal leftovers? How would you feel getting, holy shoes or, something that was broken or moldy or expired? And so we get to really interface on that way too, and even the government level, like y'all could be doing better pretty easily,
Yeah.
like that I get really excited about, just like across the board, being able to help us relearn and re-engage in the way that we experience resources, because this earth, we have enough for everybody,
Oh yeah.
even if it's overpopulation.
Look at yeah. It like we have so much that like we waste so much and we still have more, right? Like
Yep.
that's the one can argue that like it's an unsustainable model, over the next 100 years. You probably don't want to do that, but that's a different conversation, right? Like it's a, but like it is what it is with technology. Before you know it, like there's going to be, you'll have plant-based burgers that bleed and stuff like that. Like
Where they already have that.
yeah, no, we like I found out about freaking Restaurant Depot over by the Walmart.
Yeah.
Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. Oh my gosh. When I tell you, I've never been so proud to be a business owner, because I go in there, those the jalapeno poppers, like those jalapeno cheese bombers that you could only find at like at the fast food places, right? The ones with the cheddar cheese and the real jalapenos in there. The ones at like Safeway or like Fred Meyer's, you only get the ones with the cream cheese. Those things suck, right? But you get the ones with the cheddar. The
Uh-huh.
cheddar, man, changes the game, right? And so
They
it's like
have
I
they're-
found out, yeah, that's the only way you can find them is there. And so they got those, and then you could actually get like the Impossible burgers, like
Mhm.
the Impossible burgers with or you get like a big box of like 40 or something like that. And so for me, I was like, I went in there, I saw those things, I was like, I'm good, I'm good for the rest of the summer, right? Like it changed the game for me. And so it's like, but having that experience of access, right? That experience of access where it's like, I want a burger, I want something that's plant based. I don't want to sort of compromise on taste. I want to sort of have the opportunity to experience that without having to ask gatekeepers, right? Just being
Yeah.
able to just go there, get it, get out, have it in my home, and enjoy that experience and feel good about it, right? Like that's something that like I I haven't had the opportunity to do. Uh, but once I got that opportunity, I want to find ways to have it again. And I think that's a driving motivator for me, at least, where it's like, oh, this is, there's another purpose for me to just do things, and it could be trivial, but those little experiences are the difference between having a pretty decent day or a pretty good day. You know, And,
Yeah.
like
Well, so much of our culture is around food. So access to food that resonates with us, it is nutritious, and that like we like, and that is exciting, is a really important part in reclaiming culture. And I don't just mean like soul food, and I don't just
yeah,
mean like bison, um, but just even the relationship with food, that it's can be celebratory and that it should be an experience. I love that you're like, this is an experience. This is an important, like, start to finish. There are points of this that are experience that like meet the needs, that like make or break the day, and like make or break how this feels. That is such an important part about our relationship with food. And we don't get to talk about that, and we don't get to hold space for that. And that should be like everything around food should be both a celebration. It should be about being an experience. My kid, this is like the most amazing thing and the most irritating thing ever. Like meals with him are like, if he had his choice, every meal would be like 2.5 hours long. No exception. Like we would sit there and eat slowly. And like, even if it's at home and like, you got to get up and do stuff or whatever, but every meal would be like a true pause, right? And it is the most beautiful. And also as a parent, a person who's just like always trying to go and do stuff,
Yeah.
I'm like, I love it. And I'm also like, bro, this is not sustainable. But like that pause and like his relationship with food being an experience and really an opportunity to break bread and converse and to be paused from all of the chaos is so incredible. And like, I hope that in this work and just other work that is happening, that we can keep changing and reestablish relationships with food in a healthy way. Cause like I'm a eat over the kitchen sink real fast and like run out the door kind of a person. And like, that's so unhealthy, right?
It's
not an
like
experience.
I think, as I'm like hearing like me growing up and hearing like friends at school saying like, oh yeah, we have like dinner as a family. I'd be like, what? Like, what time your parents get home from work? Because my mom don't get home from work till 9:30 p.m. And so I'd be damned if I gotta wait till 9:30 to eat. Like I'm not like that's not happening. And so for me, like hearing that as like that being an expectation of like being able to sit down and have conversations and like slow down as you're enjoying a meal, like that was always seen as like a luxury. It's like, oh yeah, it must be nice. Like, you don't like your freezer's not stacked with TV dinners because you don't know how to cook, and like it just must be nice. And so we're seeing like it's good to see that like we're seeing that like kids these days are like that's not their default experience, and we're seeing that people are starting to experience that and appreciate it. Because I remember when that was just a dream. It's like, what, y'all, like, you guys have dinner as a family? That's wild.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just, yeah, it's fascinating. Like in this work, just talking to people with different relationships with food, different experiences, and how, I mean, one of my favorite things is when people know that they're going to have access to food, how that changes, right? Like
Yeah.
one of those, it is a moment to breathe, right? Like food is going to be here. Like I don't have to stress or worry about that, because and food is, like that's a basic need. It's critical.
Mm-hmm.
Um and there's a lot of weirdness because how we treat, like food pantries, how that experience is, how food stamps works, how just even like free and reduced lunch, the way people are treated and like the kind of quality and all of that, it really impacts the relationship people have with that need. And so to help people have a shift and start to kind of decolonize their relationship with food is the best thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because I remember like when I got on Snap, the one thing that like I grew to appreciate is sort of because often like as you're growing up and all these things, you sort of look at food as like, I need food to like survive and I need it, but I ain't got that much money, so I need to find a way to make it stretch, right? So like those meals that would probably take a one sitting, you probably make it stretch to like a meal and a half, right? Like or you'll have pizzas, and you'll get the deals, and you'll do all these different things to like make the money stretch long, like further along, right? And so I found that uh whenever I would have like a good day, or I feel stretched or whatever, or stressed or whatever, one thing that I found is like I'm a glutton for Oreo cookies and Ben and Jerry's, right? And so like two things that like I always saw was like a celebration or like a luxury. I might just like get a pack and I just will enjoy it once a year or something like that. whenever I was just like, I could just use a W today, right? I'll just go to the mini mart, I'll just get it, and I'll just stop. Things will stop. And I just enjoy it. I just gather my thoughts. I relax, and I'm just not doing anything but just sort of being in the moment. And I started to appreciate just that outlet, and having peace of mind that like this isn't going to cost me, more, because it's like Oreos ain't really cheap unless you getting them at the getting them on a deal or whatever. Like for like $4 or $5 for some Oreos, that's like a half hour to an hour worth of work right there. That you gotta do. And so just like little things like that, I've like grown to appreciate, because before it was just like work, 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 and then if you need to sleep a little bit, but then get back to work. But the idea of just like spending money and then taking time off to regroup and not having that be a big consequence, I was like, this is this is this is soothing, and
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even, yeah. And it's food it's comforting too. Like it's a part, I love that. Like, even just like, I love that you equate dollars to how much time that exchange. Cause I feel like that's such an important way to look at capitalism and this exchange regarding labor and what we're buying and what we're getting. And that's so beautiful, even like the need to like being able to have access point around food for celebrations or just for a pick me up, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm having a rough day and I want whatever my favorite thing is. But wait, in real life, we have to like do that whole, that math problem. Like, how much work, how much it costs. I hope that we can continue to like move away from that. I wish that we lived in an economic ecosystem that wasn't a monolith, right? Like, there is some healthy competition that could come from capitalism, I guess. But like, there's so many things that don't make sense in capitalism: healthcare, education, transportation, like public transportation, the list, there's so many other things that like this does not compute. Water.
And I always like played around with this, right? Because when I was first starting like my company, I was like, do I want to do a nonprofit or do I want to do a for profit, right? And I really played around with the idea of like, okay, like the company that I want to start, the purpose is to obviously get out of relative poverty, and creating opportunities to do work that I feel passionate about, that I just didn't have the opportunity to do. But it's also to have an impact in a community that otherwise would not see that impact if I didn't exist, right? And so I was like, okay, well, I could do the work. That's not really a problem. It's really about, when it comes to structures and having a financial structure that allows me the agency. It was like, well, I create stuff. If I create good stuff, then I'll be able to make a lot of sales, and then those sales can then fund all the other things, right? And I gravitated towards that, to where I was like, well, if I do what I say I'm going to do, then I could fund all the impact ventures that I want, and I wouldn't have to I wouldn't have to do as much paperwork. I just got to do my taxes, right? Like, you do your taxes, you're good. Money's coming in. You can do whatever you want with it. Pay Uncle Sam, go from there. And I settled on that because I felt comfortable. But with the nonprofit realm, which is where I'm like doing a lot more work, interestingly enough, I'm seeing that it's a different you're able to do the work and you're able to have the impact. And if you hit that like happy medium of like where the funding is going and where you exist, you're sitting pretty good too. And so it's a I don't know. I guess I'm just fresh to the scene, so I just need some more years under my belt. But it's
Nonprofit thing is a real interesting, because it depends on how you're getting funded. Some nonprofits are really funded through government funding. And that's a great way to go. Like if you can, like that's really is more like the vibe that I am. These foundations are unethical and it's a hot, crazy ass mess, right? Like getting funded through foundations, it's a whole lot of hoopla. It's not very generous. The wealth hoarding of like within the philanthropic community is really disturbing. It's not, it's not ethical at all. It doesn't really make sense. If your whole organization is to fund good work, how are you sitting on like $1 billion? Like, how is it also, this is a real foundation here in town. How is it that your expenses are $50 million a year, but you only give out $40 million a year? Shouldn't you fund more work than like having expenses? Just like your math is weird. And unethical. So like there's a lot of that goes on. There's also a disconnect just in terms of like the community really at large thinks that the way nonprofits are funded and how that all works, like there is a disconnect in that. Like truly there's a disconnect there with the general public. And so it's like no one really buys into nonprofit or good work, community work, right? So it's sort of like begging all of these entities, whether it's the government, the foundations or philanthropic community or the corporations to do giving as a tax write-off, because nonprofits and philanthropic work really is just a legal money laundering. It's a tax shell.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is unfortunate, right? Because it's literally just treating people as pawns. Right.
But no one talks about it like that. The very first time that I like really was like grasping this, I was like 27 years old. I was working for a company in New Orleans and I was sitting at this table with like all these dudes, and I kid you not, I was hired because in development, like I put on a dress and look great and I can talk to anybody. That's why I was hired. Not really based on anything else. It's very predatory, problematic. Like in development, being a female is really eye-opening. So we're in this room and I'm taking notes and I'm like, okay, so we're doing what with this? We're working with American Cancer Society. And I'm like, wait a minute, if they donate to this and that, how many times is the same dollar getting the tax write-off? And like, that was one of my questions. My other question was, or like, this was a little bit later. And I just said, well, like, so this is like legal money laundering. And my boss, I kid you not, got up from the other side of the table, dragged me out of this room like I was a child screaming in church, like by the arm, and was like, look now, you can write all the little questions down. We can talk about it later, but this, you cannot do this in here. And I was like, so then your reaction that this is legal, this is indeed legal. Like all you had to do was shake your head, yes or no. Like you just confirmed my question to everybody that this is legal money laundering, that this is indeed unethical, problematic, and weird. Okay, cool. Thanks, sir. It was a wild experience. Like it was a really wild experience. And a lot of people don't really understand, like that is what it is. Like if you are really caring about this kind of work, you don't need a tax write-off. You don't care. And most people actually don't give enough the way that the laws are. They don't make enough, give enough for it actually to do anything. Like when you go to Goodwill and you drop a bag of clothes, that $7.47 that they said it's worth, you don't get that, it's not how it works.
For what? Yeah.
And, if you donate $500, it's still probably not enough. Like you literally would have to make like $13,000 and then you wouldn't be giving $500.
Yeah.
Like those ratios. Yeah. And so I think like we have to talk about what this industry really is and what is actually happening more. Like I would not recommend people be getting into nonprofit work unless they really have a plan of how it's going to be funded. And I don't come from a nonprofit background. I come from a corporate and small business background, and then been doing consulting for a while. And so I've gotten to work with a little bit of everybody, and I've interfaced with a lot of nonprofits. But this, it's not, and in nonprofits in general, even if there is white saviorism and all kinds of issues like that in community, like there is a lot of, issues around that. There is a lot of incredible work happening. And so I would never take away from, like, the amazing work across the color line, across the world happening under the umbrella of a nonprofit. But how we fund this work, what is happening, all of the nuances in it, this shit's wild.
Yeah, it's for people that get into it and they think it's a different way. From my perspective, being in a lot of rooms and in a lot of conversations with nonprofits trying to get stuff funded, the overwhelming feeling that I got was like, me personally, I'd rather just make something cool and just get a whole bunch of sales. Because if I could replicate that, I can't replicate every single having to go through application season and grant funding season. I'm like, oh no, like this ain't for me.
And grants really are, we gonna ask you the same 4 questions 30 different ways, and we gonna see by the end of it how much of an attitude you have. And that is literally how we gonna grade this. So the 15th time I've asked you this question, if I read it and it sounds short, sounds rude, you just no longer care, they're gonna be like, we're not funding them. It literally is like, how much can we harass you with the same fucking question, and then will you lose your marbles and be professional or not? Like, because it's not.
And at the end, it's like at the end, it's like, oh, you mad? Well, you could apply to somebody else. It's like,
yep, it really is. They're like, oh, we don't want to work with y'all. You're cranky. It's
something else.
And my favorite with the whole grant cycle, like the whole calendar of it is crazy. They'll be like, well, we don't want to fund. This is a funder that said to me, well, we'd be really interested if you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. Well, we don't do X, Y, and Z. How is that the email? Like, why would you, like, another one was, well, if you guys, when you guys grow a little bit further, we'll be interested in funding you. Well, if you don't fund us now, how are we going to get there?
How are we going to grow?
I asked them that, and she was like, oh, that's a really good question. I was like, well, how about this? Why don't you go talk to the board about that? Because I don't know how y'all missed that. Like, if you want to work with us, how come you can't work with us now? Why do I have to wait 3 years till it's to grow into what? Like, this is confusing to me. And she came back and she was like, you're right. I think we'll have to, like, we're still like in conversation. She's like, I think you're right. That didn't make any sense. No, it doesn't make sense. How?
Yeah.
If you is worthy, why would you not help us get to a larger, more stable place? Or they want to know what is your long-term funding, but if you go the grant route, they only do a year, maybe to 5 years.
You don't have long-term funding if you are going, like, what long-term funding? Like, what like, oh, we invested in a grant writer that, like, is on the board of trustees for, like, it, like, what, like, how do you have that? Like, that was the thing that got me. I was like, oh, because for, like, if you're not familiar with it, you think that, like, oh yeah, nonprofits are cool. Like, they got this funding and they're able to do this. If they're hitting, right? Like, they got all this stuff. And then you realize that they are stressed out every single year at the very same time. And they either didn't spend all the money that they needed to spend before the time is up, or they need to figure out how to renew the funding that they had. And God forbid a funder changes things, then they're scrambling, right? And I was like,
or positive.
This is wild.
Like, I think the Women's Foundation or something. So they reached out to us. I had a lovely interview with them. Like, they just wanted to talk to us. Come to find out, they're not doing grants right now for anybody, because they're having an ED change, And so anybody who had been using them as a funder, like, because sometimes if you have a relationship, you can like, sometimes you can have like, oh yeah, they will always be funding us or whatever. Like
yeah. If it's along with the mission, they'll be stupid to discontinue it.
So yes, there's some sort of reliability, once you have relationships, depending on how big the foundation, blah, blah, blah. But then like in reality, a foundation or a fund at any moment can just say, oh, for the next 18 months, for whatever reasons, we're not like our staff is in place, but we're not funding anything.
It's like, what? What?
And, it's really interesting because like the way we've operated at EGC in this last, year and a half, we've, worked through the fires, we've worked through the snow, we just worked through extreme heat.
Yeah.
And so this idea of like pausing just so that we can have these like, I don't know, whatever experiences so that we can like have some sort of peaceful kumbaya transition, if you will. Like it's something that like really doesn't resonate, right? Like it's just like
it's like the epitome of a first world problem, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's literally like when they see like first world problem memes, like this is literally it. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, like what happened? Like, oh yeah, they decided to go on vacation for 18 months, and so we got to figure out what to do until they come back. It's like, like what? Like what?
It's hella wild.
Like, yeah, it's like for me because it's like I'm okay with like there being seasons to like do things, and so like some seasons will be up, some seasons will be down. You have sort of general operations, and then there will be the waves that you sort of got to catch, and you got to sort of figure out what to do in sort of the bear times, right? But a complete pause, like just sort of like we're just going to stop, and then we'll pick back up where we left off.
I'm like, but your staff, like nobody can hold it down.
Like,
and for me, that makes me really think real hard about let's always have a model that like, and right now it's still global pandemic, right? So it's still COVID is happening. So I'm like, well, if something happens and I can't be, we need to still be able to operate and function without my presence. Just, like, not that I want anything to happen to anybody, to me or anybody on our team, but we have to be able to have a model where it is not, dependent on one individual to make it tick. Yeah. Because, we're talking about a foundation that's funding, even a dozen programs that could be impacting tens of thousands of people, depending on what programs those are funding. Yeah. Our program, we serve about 2,500 people every single week. We have multiple employees. We have to be in a space where it's not just hyper dependent on, one or two people, because that's a lot of people relying on something.
Well, that's a big responsibility for individuals to have long term. Like it's even if like the model is sustainable, sort of like money's coming in, money's coming out, and they're able to like operations are sustainable. I guess the operation is sustainable, but the model isn't. And so it's like, because to that point, right? We got the freaking Delta variant coming up, and taking over California right now. And so it's like, what is next month or what is 2 months going to look like? What is peak flu season going to look like how it was last year, right? Like it's so much uncertainty in a world of uncertainty that like it could turn out good, but it also could not. And if it doesn't, then like what are those what does that impact? Yeah. And so it's I'm thinking about this because I'm going to medical school and I'm going to be in the thick of things, and so it's like I got to start thinking about this because I got every possible vaccine that they will let you get, or they will essentially let you get for school, because that's just what you got to do in the field. And so it's like, if I catch smallpox or if I get all these things, like all the other things, this podcast, everything is over, right? Like it's over. It doesn't, it can't go anymore. And so it's like, how do you reckon with that, and how do you make something that can live on or sort of like have a legacy? That people were able to pick up and continue, like as you as a person try to navigate your life. And
Yeah. I think it's a different way of being intentional with building, right? Like you and I grew up in a space of really hyper focused on the individual
yeah,
and hyper focused on, what can I get for me and what can, how does this benefit me? And we got to start building in a way that is very much more intentional about building for the community, building for, long term, building in a way that this can be passed on so that somebody else doesn't have to start from scratch.
yeah, yeah. And I always think about like that sort of cultural idea of like, when you make it, then you can put people on. But like, you got to make it first, right? And as much as it isn't that like, sort of self-centered mentality, uh it's it parallels it in many ways, right? Like, it's a, because if you don't make it, then other people don't have the opportunity to, and that's what the consequence is. And so sort of being able to turn that on its head, and sort of having a team as you sort of go and embark on these things. It's like,
Yeah.
you might not make it, but your partner like might, and then that opens up more doors for other people to make it.
Yeah.
And it's just different. It's just a different approach.
We're still in a place of so many firsts though too. And I think that's
Yeah.
really important to honor and to acknowledge, right? Like I remember going to college and how much of a big deal it was. Because I was like the first, like, yeah, in my dad's family to like really go to college, right? Like
Yeah.
I went away and all the things, right? And it was like a really big deal. And even my mom's family, really similar, like very few people had been to college. And as I like moved on from that experience, and that was a really long time ago, I regularly am shook by, this is the first so and so to do this, or the first,
Yeah.
yada yada yada. You know, EGC is one of the few, Black-led nonprofits that raised over $1 million. We raised, over $2 million. There's not very many Black women who are on the list of people that can say, I have raised over $1 million.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's
that hit me so hard when like I had heard that, but then certainly I was in a space where we were like, there was a bunch of Black women who had raised over $1 million for various things. And I was like, holy shit, like I am in a group of less than 200 women.
yeah.
The
Mm-hmm.
fuck?
Like that's and I think that's when the world starts to get smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, oh, like that person over there that you were reading about, they're right there in the table right next to you. And then that person that you was watching that YouTube TED talk on, they're sitting right there. And then it's like, because I think that I had that as like things started to pick up with me in like the AR space, where it was just like, oh, the people that I was watching TED talk videos on, I'm sort of in conferences with them now. Like this
Yeah.
is wild. And so like then it's like, wait, dang, am I like, like am I having that impact? Am I like doing those things too? Like you often have to sort of like take a step back and be like, like me sort of having this imposter syndrome of like me not at the level that I need to be or that I want to be at, but then I'm in these conversations. It feels good, but it does take that's a whole journey that you have to like go through to sort of like claim that sort of title and claim that
Struggle with
identity.
imposters. I
Yeah.
struggle with that a lot.
Like I'm literally sitting here like, dang, I got to take the certification test and I'm suck. So I need to start from the beginning. And it's like, the reason I'm taking the certification test is because I do this work. Like, why am I starting from the beginning? I just need to figure out what I need to improve on.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a, and it's a, like, it's just, there's no, blueprint or rule book for it. You just sort of, you just, you read stuff, you listen to people, you have conversations, you try things out, and then you just put your best foot forward. And if it works out, it works out. You just do your best and put your, just do it to the best of your ability. And yeah, I don't know. It's such is life, I suppose. Such is life.
It's just, yeah, I'm excited for where we are moving towards. Like, I'm not team like 2021. We're like halfway through 2021, and it is definitely proven to be ill-behaved.
Yes.
And scary. But I'm super excited where we're going, like, as I see all of these incredible things that we're doing, and that we're still like, we're starting to pave the way that has been like carved out for us. And yeah, it's exciting. It's interesting too.
Nice. And so, like, what are you the most excited about going into like the holiday season, right? Because like before you know it, fall's going to be here, and then we're in the holidays, and that's when things get crazy.
So last year for the holidays, we chose to celebrate, like, as an organization, New Year's, and that for me is, I'm really interested in reclaiming celebration and community rituals and honoring traditions, and not just traditions that are rooted in capitalism. So like, I struggled with some Juneteenth events being centered around commerce. I struggle with birthdays just being hyper focused around presents.
Yeah.
And we didn't do Christmas like as an organization last year. We did New Year's, and so we did. We called them joy boxes, and they had just like little home good things, games, items that families could like get together and celebrate, and that were fun.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to be like, we'll get to start planning that by the end of August, and like we'll start working on that and thinking through that and getting that together. And I'm really excited for that. And I'm really excited to be like doing more work. Right now, I'm starting to have conversations with a variety of different elders about community traditions and rituals, and celebrating in a different capacity. We had with another group that I organized with, we had a Juneteenth second line, which was really magical. Portland doesn't really quite understand what a second line is, but we had fun. So like, I'm really excited to be like doing some more like research and community conversations around that, and then really getting to see that show in my work in a larger and a louder way. I have spent a lot of time in New Orleans, and so that is a city and culture that has really highly influenced my understanding of celebration in community togetherness.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to both like really intertwine some of the things that I've learned in those spaces, but also the things that I've, experienced here. I was a debutante in Portland with La Femmes, and I really think that would be a very big celebration, like way bigger than the Rose Festival, which is kind of creepy to me. So I want to see like the things like honor, like traditions and stuff that are happening here in the city, like celebrated and talked about and honored in a different way. La Femmes is over 70 years old. There's tons of, it's a really old organization. Over 70 years old, or maybe just like the president's over. I don't know. I have to look. It's been
somebody's over 70.
It's really old. Like, they've been around for a long, long time. I can't go nowhere and like they're like, oh, you're Debbie, you're La Femme? Yeah, me too. Amazing network of people, and it's it was started as a way to help young women learn how to be in community and network, and how to be like, finishing school kind of manner stuff. LaFems is the reason I went to college. I wouldn't have went to college without LaFems. And so, yeah, like, how do we celebrate and honor those? Like the work that Van Port Mosaic is doing, like, how do we make that, like, their work amplified, and also celebrate and honor the people, whose lives are lost, who homes were lost in a different way. So I'm really excited about sort of like that being a much more significant part of my work. We've laid the foundation of what we're doing as like UGC as a whole. And I think this is like a really important part of like community wellness for me, and looking at community healing. Something I'm regularly talk to, the city and the state, government officials about is we celebrate who and what we care about, right? So if I care about you, I'm going to find different ways to celebrate you, whether it's my love language or your love language, right? So like with my kid, I know that food, right? Like I'll be like, we're going to go get food, or I'm going to bring food home. Like that instant mood booster. It's a way that he feels seen and celebrated. It's one of his love languages, right? Like, so like for me, I love plants. I love flowers, right? So like when people bring those to me, I give them to people, like it's a whole thing. You don't see that with the city, right? Like, who does the city celebrate? You don't celebrate anybody. Like, I can honestly, by what y'all do, I cannot tell if you like anybody. Like, you really don't like anybody.
It's like, if they left and fell off the earth, would you even care? Like, it's
like, y'all do even like, so I'm fascinated with like my conversations with them and showing them like, this is also a way that you build community trust. This is also a way that we honor people and respect people. Like in our own families, we see that like some family members seem to be celebrated more than others. Why, and what are the dynamics around that, right?
Yeah.
Those are things that we unpack. We can take that same lens though to a larger sect, right? And we see this regularly with how the Black community is treated, that we're not celebrated in any capacity.
Yeah.
Things are taken from us, whether it's resources or an idea or a dance, like constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So very interested and very excited to be just even having conversations about that. And I get to spend more time with elders, which I really enjoy, because one, it's like learning, and it's also just like ridiculously funny. Like,
yeah, it's like my girlfriend is she's going into geriatrics, and so it's like she just tells me just everything that just it's just
she has stories for days.
it's just it's just never ending. I'm like, dang, like I thought kids were interesting. Like it's a whole nother beast, man.
It's hilarious. I have some elders that will come to see me at our workspace. And like sometimes I won't be there, and I'll get these hilarious stories that so and so came by to talk to you or whatever. And it's always some like they're just like real ridiculous stuff, and like just the foolery. This elder the other day she went to the cooling center, one, because she was being nosy, and she was like, I just want to see what was happening, and I want to see if it was good. And I had said that like I had originally wanted us to do a cooling center, and if there's another heat wave, I'm going to organize that, because her account of what the cooling center was pretty ridiculous, and it included a ferret. Like, and wait, so what? Somebody brought their ferret, which I guess you can't leave your ferret at the house.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And it's Portland. People got ferrets and stuff. Like,
I'm no judgment on your pet choices. That's not part of the story. But like the way that this elder came and told me about the cooling center, including the ferret, like I was in stitches. And like that is, for me, I'm like, every time I talk to an elder, like I get some crazy ass story that includes something ridiculously like, did you know there was a ferret at the cooling center? No, I did not. Like, I absolutely did not know.
Oh, yeah. The attention to detail in these experiences, and then the ability to, share it with others. It's admirable. it's really admirable because I'm like, it's hot. I ain't paying attention to nothing except for what is on my neck and what is misting me in the face. It's
So she
yeah.
had like, I mean, I felt like I had like low key experience the cooling center, like the details, the animal experience, the issues with accessibility, like just the whole. I don't know. I also feel like it's always, in addition to being extremely entertaining, there's always lessons of like, don't do this, or like learning points, and so yeah, I'm very excited that like regular part of my day the next couple months gets to include conversations with elders and just and being able to like weave a lot of that wisdom into how like my work really, plays out as an individual.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. It's yeah, well, hey, just keep doing the good work that you're doing. It's always good to see. It's like, every couple of days I get this new Facebook notification of like, doing this and this and this. I'm like, okay, yeah, we moving. And
Yeah, we're having a really big like day party at the end of this month. We're gonna announce the details in a couple days, but it's like gonna be centered around books and plants. So like it's a very Portland vibe.
yeah, it's very, very Portlandy, books and plants, which is very interesting dichotomy because it's like you need to kill plants to make books, but then you need to, but then there's this big thing of
The
yeah,
whole
yeah,
library vibe.
it's very interesting, very
It's a
interesting.
vibe. It's a
Yes.
vibe, right? Like it's a vibe. Very Portland. So we'll be having that. Hoping to really pull in and connect. Like I'm in all these different spaces, so I'm really hoping to better like. And this will be an event that'll connect both families, but like a lot of young professionals. This will be a
Yeah.
BIPOC only event. It's gonna be really fun.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah. Just let me know. Hopefully, because I think I move at the end of the month. I'll be moving to Reno for school, and so my time in Portland is coming to an end, unfortunately.
But
Yes.
it's super exciting. Med school.
Yes. Yeah. It's yeah, it's a thing. Things are moving, and so I'm trying to figure out ways to like one continue this project and still being able to like share stories like yours and a whole lot of other people, even if I'm not actually in Portland anymore, and seeing where all this stuff goes. But yeah, Dr. Steve is on the horizon, and I can't complain about that. And so but yeah. Oh, so there's one thing that I always ask people that come on the show. It's given that this is a focused around sort of the nuances of like Black experiences for like people in Portland. It's like, what is the Blackest thing that you've done in Portland?
The Blackest thing that I've done. Well, recently I was told by an elder the Blackest thing that I did was I came to a meeting at 11 a.m. smoking a blunt. I would say outside of that, goodness, I don't know. I do like we kind of like live in just Black Portland, right? Like we are around Black people all the time. We go to Black owned businesses. I don't know. That's a really good question. I mean, when I was younger, I'd be like probably like some kind of a party or that's a hard question, Steven. That's a really hard question.
I've gotten a spectrum of answers from from sort of the stereotypical stuff to the like I've never even thought that was even possible type of stuff. Like it's a very interesting question to ask from my point of view.
I'd say Black History Month, when we're in town, we go really hard with like going to events, being around folks, being intentional about, I mean, we're always intentional about the restaurants and stuff that we eat out at, but like,
Yeah.
I'd say when we're here, because we sometimes are gone for ballet purposes in February just because it's audition season. But I'd say, like, surprisingly, we've had many Black, like hella Black experiences. I'd say one of my kids, like, he created a really Black experience at the the Armory, Portland Center Stage, and he did like a performance with all of his like very Black art in the space, and that was like super. That was during Black History Month? He's waving at me. I don't know. I can't remember, but that was probably one of like the Blackest one of them experience I've had in Portland. Yeah. It's hard here because it's like you'll have Black experiences, but it'll be like a lot of white people around.
Yeah. Well, it's thanks to 2020, it's like Portland is like the center of like, Black. I mean, Portland's like the center of, activism at this point for it's just.
It is definitely it's always been a hot spot for activism and a political hotspot just based off of like our history here, but it's definitely blowing up for sure.
Yeah, it's
interesting how people are engaging with that.
Knowing how Portland is, it's really interesting to see how things have turned out. Seeing what Portland is known for, knowing what Portland is, it's like, well, that's new. Like,
yeah.
And I didn't realize that until I was talking to people that aren't from Portland. I say, oh, I'm in Portland, and they'd be like, ooh, like, what's up? I'd be like, no, it's literally.
I regularly, my friends from everywhere else will hit me up with newspaper articles or, did this really happen? Is this at your house? I'll be like, first of all, calm down. Like, I don't live downtown. And they'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or when this was last summer when like this night, I don't know, all these protests happening, like a bank was lit on fire. And I got so many people hit me up and I was literally like, y'all bugging. I definitely don't live downtown. I don't live in the bank. Like,
yeah. Well, the crazy part is that like I do live downtown, so like all that stuff was like, it was happening off of NATO, and so it was like I was like, yes, I know all the stuff, and but it wasn't like that bad though. Like it was crazy. It was wild, but I was like, dang,
people definitely dramatize a lot of
it. Yeah. It was definitely over dramatized. But people were getting snatched up, and I was in meetings with people that had black eyes because they got hit with batons. I
protested last summer. I don't be out there in the same extent, but like I've been an activist in those spaces forever. I did a lot of interfacing with our local government and the police last summer, and even right now not so much anymore. But I had a standoff at race talks with the police chief, and it didn't go very well. We have very different opinions of what they do every day. So but that was wild. I did a lot of jail support last summer, and just like the things were happening, but it was also like a lot of people were out that were not there really for Black Lives Matter. They were really, they were just because they wanted a fight or a party, and
it was just a convenient excuse to sort of
be destructive.
Well, it's a convenient excuse to do what Portland is kind of known for. Mm-hmm. It's like if you look at just all the history with what is it, like the Dales, or like just all the stuff that like sort of gets that Black people of color sort of get the bear the grunt of, like like white freedom. Like it really played out exactly like the way you would expect it to.
But it also didn't fully like there was a lot of disconnect of like, what are we actually doing? Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think I was told this is a sign that I'm becoming old, that like, I truly believe a lot of this work has to be changed in policy. Like,
Yeah.
please don't burn my local grocery store down because I need them. Like, I will die.
Yeah.
I cannot grow all my vegetables. I guess I have Farm Connects now, but nonetheless, like,
That's a very unique situation.
right. Yeah. Like, I need the grocery store to be on and popping and functioning just fine, please. So like, I think there's a lot of disconnect in how we move things forward. And I will say that's like, this is very privileged. I went to college. I have a lot of friends that are, in really interesting positions of influence, and some in positions of power at this point.
Yeah.
And so I have a different understanding of both our systems at work and access points and, realistic pathways to liberation. None of them really include us like fighting the police.
Yeah. It's like
It's
in an ideal world where, the plans and the intersections like the plans intersect. It's like, okay, you gonna burn that down? Cool. You better have the capital to purchase that land and build up something that you own. Otherwise, it's like, what was the whole point of this? Like there has to be, a sort of, larger plan. Like, you can't just ransack something and not conquer it and like make it your own. You just leave it there. Like,
I mean,
it's like,
the system's broken, but there are lots of things that we can use that we just need to pivot to make this, like, to make it make sense or to make
yeah,
it work. Right. For me, I always boil things down like, is this ethical or is it not?
yeah,
Right. Like, if this is ethical, then like, let's make the pivot. So whatever we're talking about is ethical, and that changes the game. That changes everything. And it's interesting. Not every, doctors, you have to like, you're supposed to like make an ethic code, right? But not
yeah.
a lot of professions do that. Marketing people,
Oh
development
yeah.
people, they never heard about ethics. They be like, ethics, what? Huh?
Yeah.
Is that a club? Is that a place?
You got to
Like,
take an oath. You got to do this. Like, if you don't, like, you're not going to get accepted. You're like, there's real consequences to not doing the things that like you're supposed to do. Live up to the expectation. It's
and not saying that it's like a perfect process, but there's, at least there's like, if you tell a doctor, bring up ethics to a doctor, like, they're at least, they
rules
don't
of
have,
engagement. Like,
yeah,
there's a code of honor. Like it.
yeah.
There's a
A
code
lot of
of honor.
professions, a lot of spaces there's not. And a lot of, even within activism work, right? Like, a lot of people are not, they're not connected to that. And really, ethics is this whole larger, bigger conversation. But at the end of it, is this right or wrong? Is this harming people or not? And like,
Yeah.
even within an activism spaces, like, we got to start like kind of coming back to that. Like, and it's a real simple thing to boil down to. But if we're like really navigating from that center, everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And so with it again, I appreciate the time hopping on the podcast with me, chatting, dropping some gems of knowledge and sharing a little bit of the journey. Where can people learn more about what you're doing and the stuff that you have going on?
Yeah, folks can find us on our website, which is www.equitablegivingcircle.org. We're also on Instagram, on Facebook. I'd say Instagram is our best. I think we're on Twitter too, but like, nobody ever gets on there because Twitter is crazy.
It's,
It's
yeah,
distracting.
it's a madness sometimes.
Yeah. So I'd say Instagram is the best like social media avenue to connect with us. We post regularly. We're pretty engaged there. We have on our website, you can donate. On our website, you also can sign up to be, if you're a BIPOC person, to get into our programming. We are also always looking for volunteers for across the color line. So if you hop on our, I think it's the provide page, and our website's going to get another little facelift in a little bit. But there are some forms on there so you can sign up to volunteer with us, because we need more human power to move the work. definitely hit that donate link. We always need a few dollars. Yeah, check us out online, and hopefully we will see people more in person as, I don't know, the world turns and we see what happens next.
Yep, fingers crossed. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Hopefully things hopefully things don't get worse. And then hopefully things get better. Because if they start opening up and then things get worse,
I'll be inside.
yeah, then there's just some nonsense, right?
I'll be inside.
Yeah. And so again, really appreciate the time and everything. Definitely we're going to drop some of the links and everything, and yeah, just best of luck with everything. As you start to continue to expand, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
A year under your belt, and you guys are still moving. So it's good to see. It's good to see that. It's good to see that. That flourish.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Black Rose PDX Podcast is recorded at the Seoul District Business Association office in collaboration with Flossin Media. We are located off of Northeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Portland, Oregon. This podcast is recorded, mixed, and mastered by Stephen Christian. Background music is provided by Spring Gang at Epidemic Sound. Follow us on all social media platforms at PDX Black Rose. PDX BLACKROSE. Give us a rate and review on your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. Click the subscribe button to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Thank you.